Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, podsters, or podroonies if you prefer. I forgot what I was going to say then. Great start, Martin. This episode, we are talking Legends. We're going back to one of our Legends episode, and we are talking Rob Reiner films for this week. And I'm joined by a guest, Chase, from the Movie Gap podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Cool. It is a pleasure having you on. So you have a brilliant podcast. You've been around for a while, not like these amateurs out there. So tell us about your podcast and where can we find you?
So my podcast is called The Movie Gap. We are a movie podcast, hits the title. So I'm a huge movie buff. Like, I love movies, I love film. I ended up majoring in BFA in acting, and then I got a film studies degree as well because I just couldn't get enough. And but my best friend, who I met him through high school theater when we were in high school, and we've been friends for 20 years almost now. And when we started the podcast, it was about that time 5 years ago where I realized he's never seen any films.
Right,
like he had never seen any of the Die Hards or Indiana Jones or Jaws or like anything. So I was like, well, then let's do that. You watch a movie that everybody's seen basically, and then we'll talk about it and see what, a 30-something-year-old opinion of a movie that's over 30 years old for the first time is. And that's where we're at, almost, 200 something episodes in. He's finally getting to where he kind of likes movies, but he now knows how to talk about why he hates them. It's it's mainly an excuse for us to get together and make real bad jokes while we under the guise of talking about film. So it's a lot of fun. But yes, it's called The Movie Gap. We are on all of the major streaming services, iTunes and Spotify for podcasts, and a bunch of other ones that I don't even know what they're all called, but you can find us anywhere that you find podcasts. And then also you can go to crossthestreams.com and find us on there. That's where you can get all of our archived episodes, as well as the videos of some of the ones that we've covered that we did with video. But yeah, that's our network, cool. Cross the Streams Media. And there's a bunch of other podcasts on there that are our sister shows, covering any vast majority of things, from a bunch of white nerds talking about movies to a bunch of white nerds talking about comic books.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, and we're also on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Threads and everything. And it's all at The Movie Gap.
Nice. So the jokes always come first, then the movies sometimes.
Yeah, especially with my co-host. So
cool. Right, Rob Reiner. Then I feel like he's just such a very varied director. He's done all sorts of things in his career, and I feel like maybe not in the same league as, well, I don't know, maybe not in the same league as someone like Stanley Kubrick, but he has like a varied like genre of films that he's done, I would say. To like courtroom drama, A Few Good Men, horror film, Misery, arguably the best romantic comedy out there in When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
A mockumentary, and kind of a few comedies in there as well. So, and the guy can act as well. Yeah, I think he's great. Do you feel like he is kind of a forgotten master these days?
Well, I mean, he is certainly gotten a lot longer in the tooth, but his movies, he had such his direction like what a start to his career. You know, I mean, he did Spinal Tap was his first one. I mean, he was in all of the Family, and he, his dad is comedy royalty, who we just lost not too long ago, Rob Reiner. I mean, Carl Reiner. And, but yeah, his movies, like he was hit like these great movies that stand the test of time. And then around the 90s, like after like A Few Good Men, it starts to get, diminishing returns from him, I think.
Not great.
Yeah. I know that he's got like, there was a time that he went real like anti-tobacco and just is very adamant about how bad smoking is and everything. So that's what I know of him from the last like 20 years. I don't really remember what the last movie he did was. I have to look that up. But
I remember he was in, he played the Wolf of Wall Street's dad.
Yeah.
That was quite a funny cameo.
No, yeah, he's funny. Oh, yeah, he was in New Girl. He was Zooey Deschanel's dad. So yeah, he pops up in some stuff here and there. Yeah. He's definitely a legend and an icon in the industry. So I mean, when you approached me about doing this and I was able to pick it, it took me a while to just like nail down which one I wanted to bring to the fight.
So what is your choice then for Rob Reiner films?
My choice is actually his first one. It's this is Spinal Tap.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. I am and my co-host, we are huge improv nerds. We love doing improv, teaching improv, being in improv, and watching improv. And improv is one of those things where if you love it, you're annoying about it. And it's always it is hard to find like really great improv because it is one of those things that yes, anyone can do it, but most people probably shouldn't. And you never know which one you're going to get
unless you're really good at it.
Yeah. But this movie is phenomenal improv stuff. It's like so character driven. It's so real. It's incredibly funny. And like just the idea of like editing this thing down into a like real format is insane. And like, the cinematography in it is all done in that mockumentary or that documentary style,
music video style kind of sometimes on stage.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's wild. Obviously I wasn't, born when it came out. So like I saw it, in my formative years, but like I knew who these people were, I mean, Harry Shearer is every voice on The Simpsons and, a character actor in just about everything. Michael McKean, same way. And then Christopher Guest, I was obsessed with his movies as well. All of his, films that he's done that are improvised as well,
Billy Crystal's in there as a mime.
So like, I already knew that this was definitely fake and like a mockumentary, but like a lot of people when this came out didn't know because these were all unknowns, So like, they didn't know that this wasn't real. And you can absolutely believe it.
Yeah. Were there any other films in contention for you or was it just this one?
Oh yeah. No, this one. So there was 3 that popped into my head immediately and it was this one, Princess Bride and Stand By Me. And then I was like, oh wait, and then Misery is also great, which we've done a podcast over that. So check that out. And we've also done a podcast just this year over A Few Good Men, which is also a great film. And I think one of the reasons that I like this one so much is that I don't find Rob Reiner to be like some incredible director. I think that he is incredible in the sense of he knows what he needs to do to get the story told. I don't think he's like super flashy. He's definitely not like an auteur or anything, but and you look at all his movies and they are all very different. I mean, this to Princess Bride to, A Few Good Men, like I already mentioned, and Harry Met Sally that you talked about earlier too. Like they're just all so good and in such different genres as well. But this one of all, it really sticks out in my head just as a comedy fan and just the things that it's done for comedy. I mean, it introduced those 3 guys who have been in just about everything. They've had their hands in some sort of comedy gold somewhere and many times, I think they've all even guest starred on Friends, like, so it's one of those things that's, and most of them have been getting there. Like Michael McKean just got an Emmy a couple of years ago for Better Call Saul. So like, they're still at it, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always love it when comedic actors get recognized for great acting, because I think that they almost all are. Like, if you're really good at comedy, that means that you can take an absurdist thing and make it real. So like, if you could do that, then you can take real emotions and make it real too. That's easy.
I feel like Rob Reiner is very much an actor's director.
Yes.
Maybe that's because he's an actor himself as well. So like all of his films, not just his comedy films, I feel like he directs it in a way that's not too flashy. He lets the actors do the storytelling, and kind of the camera kind of comes second almost sometimes.
Yeah. And like, the other one that I wanted to talk about, the Stand By Me, like, that is such an acting performance, and he got it out of a bunch of kids, and like, they're incredible. I'm not like a Will Wheaton fan except for that movie, man. He's so good in it. And there's stories on set about Reiner, working with Will and River and all the kids, and just like really getting real performances out of them. So yeah, he's definitely an actor's director, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, River Phoenix is incredible in that film for me. So directing then, like going into this film, you know that this is all kind of fake, and maybe because I had some context going into this when I watched this for the first time, and that the band doesn't really exist in real life, but Rob Reiner still approaches this film like it's a real documentary. You gather quite quickly that the band members are quite stupid, to put it mildly, but the direction doesn't really do much differently as if it was a real documentary. Like, the actors really do bring a lot of comedy here to the table. But when the band is like playing on stage, Rob Reiner has a bit more like license to be a bit more expressive, like to put his own comedy in there. Like during the bottom song, there's some like camera angles on their asses like they're a girl band to make them, look pretty stupid. But you have all the camera moves and positions you would expect, but Rob Reiner puts subtle differences in there to make them look very unflattering and not cool.
Yeah. It's like I said, like, he's not a flashy director that like anybody, like if you said, oh yeah, Rob Reiner directed that film these days, like, not a ton of kids necessarily know these movies, or if they do, they've known them since they were kids, and but they don't know the name Rob Reiner. And like, I think one of the things that makes him a legend in that aspect is he gets out of the way of it, and it's that muted direction camera wise that is such a light touch, and like you're talking about in this film, the documentary aspect of it and the things that are so funny, he's not like, you don't feel like he's setting it up to be funny.
No.
Right. Which he knows what's coming, because it isn't an actual, documentary. So like, they know what they're going to be doing. They know what shots they need, but they let it happen in front of the camera. And those takes that just like let those moments breathe. And, when the way that everybody's reacting and the shots that he can get of the other people on the outside of what is funny, like when it's Christopher Guest, the lead guitarist, I forget, Nigel, when he's like going down and he gets stuck on the ground and he has to have the roadie come pick him up, and it's like so funny, but it's not really played as this like big like comedic physical comedy kind of bit. It's played as like this guy who thinks he's rocking out and it gets stuck.
An emergency, get him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also with like, you say he doesn't do too much, and I would agree, but like in some of the interviews stuff, like the camera is kind of zooming in and moving about, but you kind of don't notice it so much. You're still very much concentrated on what the actors are doing, because what they're saying is just like, hang on, what did he say? That is hilarious,
Yeah, I mean, it's that light touch. Like when I'm saying he's not doing a lot, I don't mean that in like a negative way.
No,
it's like he knows. Sometimes the best person on an improv troupe is the person who knows when not to go in and start something else. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, this is what I need to make this scene better. And if you have this talent between like those three guys, and I could let this happen, I don't need to do anything to quote unquote make it better. It's making a souffle. If you try too hard, you're gonna pop it.
Hey, I'm James Lovino, and I'm here to tell you about Alternate Sides, a movie podcast with a twist. I've worked in the film business for 2 decades, but I haven't actually seen that many movies, and this has been driving my frequent collaborator, Sam, a self-confessed film snob, crazy. So every week, while he's stuck in his car trying to avoid getting a parking ticket, thanks to New York City's alternate side parking regulations, we discuss a classic film I've finally just gotten around to seeing. Alternate Sides, a new podcast about movies, parking, and a 25-year friendship, wherever you get your podcasts.
And I feel like Rob Reiner maybe puts a lot of trust in his camera operators and the DP here, like as if they have to have an understanding of improv as well. So, because a lot of the time Rob Reiner is in the scenes, so he's kind of leading the improv stuff, and the camera operator has to be on the same page, kind of thing of like, oh, okay, this is getting good now. Let's focus in on this more. So I feel like the relationship between DP and actually what's going on, as it is very improvised, has to be very in sync. So there's a lot of trust there, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because back in the 80s, improv as a performance was not really around. Like it had just kind of started becoming something that people were like, oh, this is worth watching. Like an audience will pay for this kind of thing. It was basically just an acting exercise. Marlon Brando was real big into improv, and it's all about using it to get into the characters and having that realism, that he brought to film acting from stage. And it was a stage thing. And all of a sudden it became, oh, there's ways of making this fun and entertaining, and it becomes its own performance piece. And, in the 80s is when that really started. They started doing all that, the groundlings and that improv to sketch kind of stuff that, with SNL and everything really put that on the forefront. I don't know too much about like the improv stuff that goes on in the UK, but, I know that y'all basically invented sketch comedy with Monty Python and all that. So preaching to the choir there.
Yeah, I think like the only previous thing to This Is Spinal Tap was probably Monty Python, right? Like, I'm not quite sure on the dates, but you had like Life of Brian and the Holy Grail movie as well. Yes, they're not mockumentaries, but like certainly the TV show was very much sketch comedies, a little bit of improv in there. But like before this film, I don't think, was there like the genre of mockumentaries? I'm not really sure, but
I don't think so. There's as a mockumentary, it's kind of weird because it's also, what has become like found footage.
Yeah.
So like it's a fine line there. And, what gets pointed at very often is like the first found footage or mockumentary would be Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
Where they have that Green Inferno documentary of these people getting eaten by, the natives in wherever it is. Or whatever.
South America.
Yeah, South America. But that would have been before this, but a very different kind of improv.
Yeah. When you say found footage, that's almost entirely associated with horror. Like you don't associate that with comedy at all.
Yeah, but like what is the Blair Witch Project but just a scary improv show?
Yeah. Yeah. Subtle differences with how that's performed, it could be hilarious.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that, again, I'm going to nerd out on comedy, but like comedy is so interesting to me because it is so close to horror. Like, there's that fine line between like, it's funny or it's terrifying. If you ever watch, a sketch show that I'm obsessed with now, it's called, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. Right. And like, there's some of those sketches that if you tweak it just a little bit, it is a terrifying nightmare, So, Tim and Eric like to play with that line too, but it is scary in a lot of ways. And, the comedic minds tend to be darker just because of what makes you laugh. I think it's Tina Fey has a quote of like, if you want to make somebody laugh, you dress somebody up like an old lady and you push them down a flight of stairs. If you want to make a comedy writer laugh, you push an old lady down a flight of stairs.
Yeah, and I read a quote recently from Jordan Peele where he said the only difference between horror and comedy is the music.
Yeah,
which I find interesting.
and
yeah.
he's a perfect example of that. A master of comedy, and then turns right around and makes these incredible horror films.
Yeah, I love his horror films; they're really good.
Yeah, and comedy and horror are two of the best and most effective genres in making like social statements on things. Comedy is all about taking the piss out of something, and horror is kind of doing the same thing. It's shining a light on it.
Yeah. So my favorite scene from a directional point, not necessarily my favorite scene, but from a directional point, is when the band is being filmed on stage as if it's a music video. But there are occasions where like Rob Reiner completely takes over in favor of like traditional narrative direction for pure comedy value sometimes. And an example of this is when like they're on stage and at the start they're in these pods and the first two pods open up, but the bass player is stuck in the pod and it won't open up. And Rob Reiner focuses on that a lot, like right up close. And normally you would try to avoid documenting that, because it's a clear mistake. But Rob Reiner goes as far as focusing on the other band members. And then when you hear this weird banging noise off camera, you're like, what the hell is that? Then it cuts to the backstage guy and the bass player, and the backstage guy is like hammering on the glass live on stage, making a right racket.
And he's like, but he's still playing in there. Like he's not breaking, he's still doing the thing, but he's like trying to get out.
And of course he gets a blowtorch out, which doesn't work either. Then for maximum comedy, the pod opens up when it's time to go back into the pod. Brilliant, like physical and directional comedy there from a directional point. Yeah, so good there.
Yeah, that's such a great one, and I also love the way it's like you're saying, like he's filming it, because he loves the character of Marty. What's his name? Marty Briggs or whatever his director's name is. Marty DeBurge, I think, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I love this band, and now I'm gonna really make them pop as much as they used to because they're going on this other tour, and it is catching all these little things that you could tell him as the character as a documentarian would be like, this is real, and I have something, even though these are like idols of mine. I have to show the real thing with something like that, or so many of these iconic scenes in this. But one that I absolutely love, and it's the follow camera. It's when they're ready to go on stage and they're like, yeah, let's go, let's rock. And then they go down a hallway and it's a dead end and it's just following them. They can't find the stage. And it never gets to like a reveal of them finding the stage. It just eventually goes to the next scene. It's so funny.
Yeah. Have you got a favorite scene in terms of Rob Reiner behind the camera?
That one is great. And then I think a lot of it is if you watch like the Fred Willard scene, when they go to the naval base or the Air Force base, and the shots that they can get of Fred Willard talking, which everything he's saying is so funny and so like deadpan but he keeps like looking over at the guys in the band, and they're just like thinking about like, this is ridiculous, like what are we doing, except that he kind of cuts away here and there because he notices that Guest is laughing and has to like keep hiding his face.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that ability to like not just stay on. Wow, I just said his name and now I forgot it again. But not just stay on the colonel, as he's talking, and then like when they say, oh yeah, play a few dance, like inserting those shots of the the rest of the hangar and like letting us know where we are as well, and then into that, because that becomes this sort of the crisis of the movie, right? Like because that's right towards that very last story arc, which they've carved out of this movie, which is the breaking point for the band. And it's when that, because his pack,
he's got a radio on
the pack starts picking up the airport signals, and then like Nigel's laughing at him, and it just he storms off, and it's like this very dramatic thing that you go from that laughing to it crossing that line of like almost scary, because it is like, oh no, this is real now. He is pissed and he is done, So like, and the way he captures that in between those two actors doing that stuff without saying anything, right? And just having that camera hang in the right spots for that. just really shows that touch that he's got.
So directing then, for me, I would go pretty decent score, I would say. Yeah, like an 8.2. Yeah, I think, as I've said many times on this podcast, sometimes it's very underrated just letting like the director just let the actors do their thing, and this is certainly a very prime example of that. And then you have the added thing of, as I said before, have to have a lot of trust with the camera department of focusing on the right things. Yeah, I think it's really great. So I'll go like an 8.2 for me. Chase, what's your score?
I'm going to go, just from the standpoint of how nice it must be to work with somebody that allows you to be as free as he does to the improv in the performers in this film, because, it was, they tried to write it and it got to a point where he was the one who was like, we can't write this. It has to be free form. Like, we could write the outline of the scenes, and then I'm going to let you guys go and I'm going to catch it. So I think it's got to be a 9. In fact, I'm going to, not 9.1. You got to bump it up one more.
Cool. So screenplay then, like for me, they've based this film structure on like the Beatles. For me, a lot of like of the events around how they eventually kind of split up, like they went through several drummers before they stuck with Ringo Starr. Like in this, they come up with ridiculous ways for them to die. Like one of them choked to death on someone else's vomit, and one spontaneously combusts, which is just absurd.
It does happen.
Yeah. It's so funny. And then you see like old TV clips of the band dressed like the Beatles in their early years and their Sgt. Pepper years. Then you have like David's girlfriend, June Chadwick, interfering with the band's management and ends up managing the band, which leads to Nigel, Christopher Guest, like quitting the band. Sort of like how like Yoko Ono seemingly interfered with the band. Whether that's true or not is still up for debate, I think. And George Harrison quits the Beatles briefly, and he does eventually come back. Yes, it's very like loosely based on this, but I like how it's like cleverly implemented here, where you have, a few scenes where Nigel kind of ignores David on stage during one of the songs, and he completely disregards June Chadwick's new designs as the band, drawn as animals, and he's like, no, we should do something like Stonehenge instead, out of spite. For a moment I was like, did he really write 18 inches on the napkin on purpose? But there's no way, I think. So it just makes it funnier for me that it's based on like a band like the Beatles and probably other bands that I don't have the knowledge on, Aerosmith and bands like that. But
the Rolling Stones, like Keith Richards does not get enough credit for keeping that. Jagger does not get enough credit for keeping that band together. Like it's the fact that they're still going is insane.
Yeah, they even have a new album, don't they?
Yeah,
recently. I love like the whole Smell the Glove album cover storyline. and the manager Ian and the band can't understand why it's so controversial and sexist, where the label describes it as like a naked woman on all fours, and she's got like a leash on her neck and is forced to smell a glove. And then she's like, you're living in the 1960s still. No one will sell this on their shelves.
The brilliance of that stuff is the throwaway lines in it too that really sell it, where it's like they think that sexist is like the same thing as sexy. Like they don't even know the word sexist. Like it's not a concept that they've ever even encountered, and then they meet the other guy that used to open for him, and they're like, his album is way worse than ours. They're like, but it's happening to him, so it's not sexist because he's so the man can be the victim. Okay.
But then she's like in that scene, look at the White Album, it doesn't matter about album covers anymore, obviously referencing the Beatles. And then when they reveal the album cover, it's just black again. Again, just a riff on the Beatles' White Album, because they're a heavy rock band. Ian's like, it's the ultimate form of death. Death sells. So I just loved like the spoofing of like rock and roll music through the album cover. So
yeah. Well, and again, like the God, these characters, you talk about screenplay and these characters are fleshed out, their intentions and their objectives and everything that they're going through from an acting standpoint is so well done, because you could tell like Ian knows how to talk to these idiots to an extent, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like, if I can sell this to them because it's cool, then they'll like, if I play into their vanity, then we have then it's all going to be okay, but it is funny watching it, now with it was like Target, or no, it was Kmart won't sell it. Sears won't sell it. And you're like those stores don't exist anymore. Like, so it's like all of this stuff, and like physical albums don't exist. The album art doesn't matter anymore. But it is. That's such a huge part of it in that era, and like but him selling it, and then the storyline with the girlfriend is so key. But then you get those small scenes, those little vignettes in there that really add to like, these guys used to be on the top of their game. They were the ones who, could do like the famous, M&M writer where like there's no brown M&Ms in our bowl. And then it goes to the college, when they're doing that college show and he's complaining about the bread and how the bread's too small. And it's just constantly like, no, you just fold it over. Oh, if I fold it, it just breaks up. I don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, that was one scene where I was like, are they taking this too far in terms of making them look stupid? I was like, come on.
Well, it's not even like the whole thing is that he's being as vain as he needs to be because he's the rock god, it was like, and then, the thing of the cranking it up to 11, the most famous part of this film, probably one of the most quoted things in it and culturally impacted. But like that scene is ostensibly there just to be funny, right? Where he's talking about his guitars and all that stuff. But then the fact that it comes back into play 3 scenes later with the wireless adapter thing for his thing. And like, again, that was the crisis of the film. That's the breaking point, the low point for all of these characters. And without that moment, we don't have an ending. Which is what happens in so many of the documentaries of this style, real documentaries. It's like you have to come up with an ending that isn't really there. Like it's because, life just continues. So like that fact that they have that big moment and then they can, the way that they do that, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a really great moment because, as you say, like you've got a lot of little scenes that don't really relate to the main story, like that one, and then when he gets the guitar, like it's a really kind of sad moment. Yes, all still very funny where you hear all this radio noise from the guitar. Storms off the stage, but then when he does come back to the band right at the end, like it's still going off, but he doesn't care. He's still going for it. It's more of a triumphant moment, and yet both occasions are still quite funny.
Well, and it's this like sad triumphant thing where they're like, "What else am I going to do?"
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's part of it at the end of the day, they are, best friends. Like they've been together forever, but also like nobody wants them as a band. Nobody definitely wants them as, separates, although I would love to see the Jack the Ripper concept album.
Yeah. I'm not sure that would go down too well, but but yeah, there's definitely a very like kind of sad quality to this. There are moments like during the rap party, it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of, it's still, there's definitely a tone of a lot of humor in those scenes where he's being interviewed, David. But it's quite sad, but yes, you have that's where a lot of the comedy comes from, but there's definitely an air of sadness throughout. The more things go wrong and like they're playing in a amusement park with like hardly anyone there and they're all putting their thumbs down, and
I told him it should be Spinal Tap and Puppet Show. Like they're not even the Puppet Show is top billed.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that like there are moments where you kind of feel sorry for them at times.
Oh yeah.
Which is an interesting balance Rob Reiner goes with here.
For sure. I mean, it's such a real script, and like it does pull on the heartstrings while being funny the whole time through, like when people think about this film, for the most part, it's, oh, I love this scene. Oh, I love that scene. It's one of those kind of remote drop movies. If it's ever on TV, you'll just like start watching it. Pulp Fiction is very similar in that way, where it's like all the little vignettes. But if you look at it as a whole piece, the way it's, intended, it tells this gorgeous, sad story. And at the end, the characters are so in denial, right? Like they that they are aware of everything that we are now aware of from the beginning, that this is a sort of look at where these people have fallen, and that they're there and they understand that now, but now they're faking. They have to fake it that they're not, they want to act as though they are the way they were when the movie starts. So it is that sort of sadness, which is glorious.
Yeah. So you kind of have this kind of double fakery, I guess, one, they're not a real band, even though they're pretending it's a documentary. And yet they're kind of, as you say, like they're faking that they're still big, even though they're in massive decline.
Well, and what's interesting is that, they've, in the past 40 years since this movie came out, they've done tours as Spinal Tap. And one of the funniest things about that was they did a show at the Royal Albert Hall, and like as a joke, one of the things was that they made a gigantic, super oversized piece of Stonehenge that they were going to bring out on set. Like that would be just like ridiculously big. And but the thing that was like, how is this not in another version of this movie, is it was literally built and so big they couldn't get it inside. And like they have footage of them, of like the roadies trying to get it inside, and it was too big to go inside, so they still had to do it with no Stonehenge.
Yeah, I think that is like the funniest scene for me, and I mean like crying with laughter funny, like, and it's the whole miniature Stonehenge scene on stage while like short people dance around it. Yes, it's like very visually, it's a very like visual thing, but it's so funny because Rob Reiner builds anticipation of when and how the miniature Stonehenge is going to appear on stage, because of course in the previous scene you have Ian the manager like freaking out, asking why it's 18-inch tall, so you're already expecting it to be funny, but you're on tenterhooks in that intro to the song of when are they going to reveal Stonehenge? And as I live only 10 minutes away from the real Stonehenge, I can confirm it is higher than 18 inches. It's literally, 10-15 minutes away from where I am now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that though, right? So everybody in this is, or like all three of the band members and everything, they're actually American. Right. And, Rob Reiner is American. This was all filmed in LA, but they used inches to like describe, like when they were telling somebody to build things, wouldn't they have used the metric system?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
I mean, maybe that's where the confusion came through, because, the double quotation is an inch versus the single being being a foot. But like, what is it as a dumb American, like what is it in the metric system? If you were to put down like, oh, I need it to be 18 meters high or whatever, or 18 yards or something.
18 centimeters, I guess it would be.
But do y'all have like a shorthand for that? Like our inches is the quotation, the double quotation, and then the apostrophes for foot. So like, I don't know if there's some sort of shorthand there. I mean, obviously it's made by Americans with that American audience in mind. So like it's funnier when we see it that way, but like, I didn't know if that translated as well.
Yeah, it's still translated. Yeah, I think it still works fine it worked fine for me. It's definitely funny. It's just, it's fine. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah,
the difference though.
I do a lot of theater, and we build sets, and I'm one of the tech directors, and I wish that we used the metric system.
Okay,
it's so annoying to like. It's just like, well, if I know the feet and. But it's 12 inches, and then you have to like cut all the inches up, and then each inch is a 16th instead of just like the 10th. It's like, I just want to do it so much easier, and the math would be so much easier. Like, I'm a creative. I don't do math well. So it's all those fractions that I thought I would never have to use after 6th grade have come back to haunt me.
So funny lines then, interesting lines, one near the start. So we became the Originals, and we had to change our name, actually. There was another group in the East End called the Originals, so we had to rename ourselves the New Originals. Then we became the Regulars. We thought we could go back to the Originals. It's the first kind of like really absurd one where you're like, what the hell?
Oh man, that I mean, obviously the most famous one is, but these go up to 11. You know, like, you rock it out, and you got to have it to go. You know, so you want that one more. Well, couldn't you just make 10 louder? Yeah, but these go up to 11. It's one more. It's one louder.
It's obviously louder.
Yeah, that one is great. And then, God, the one that gets me all the time is I find D minor is the saddest chord.
Oh God. I love that scene though when Nigel is like doing, you know, these beautiful melodies on the piano, and you know, I'm working on a 5-piece thing or whatever, and he's Rob Reiner's like, so what's it called? Lick My Love Pump. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh man, and another great one that always gets lost again because it's not one of the main guys. It's when they're talking to that the current drummer. And he's in the bathtub for whatever reason that they're interviewing him in the bathtub. That's never really established. He's just in the bathtub. But Rob, he asks him off camera and he says, "Could you see yourself doing anything other than rock and roll or whatever?" He's like, "Could you live without rock?" And he's like, "Well, as long as I have the sex and drugs, I think I'd be all right."
Yeah, that's great. He choked on vomit. It was actually someone else's vomit. Well, they can't prove whose vomit it was. You can't really dust for vomit. They see us on stage with tight trousers. You've got an armadillo in our trousers. I mean, it's really quite frightening, the size. They run screaming.
Explaining why there's no women in the audience.
Yeah. Dozens of people spontaneously combust each year. It's just not widely reported. Is a ridiculous one.
He makes a great point.
Yeah. I love the bass player as well, where he says there's two totally distinct types of visionaries. It's like they're like fire and ice, and I feel my role in the band is to be in the middle of it, kind of like lukewarm water in a sense.
Which is like, and he plays that, man. He says like two things. He's always smoking his pipe, in the background, and oh man, he's so funny.
But I think my favorite line, obviously the turn up to the 11 one is iconic, but like during the credits with the bass player again, he's like, "No, I feel like it's more like going to a national park or something. They preserve the moose, and that's my childhood up there on stage, the moose. So when you're playing, you feel like a preserved moose on stage." Yeah. What?
Oh man, it's like
so good.
If you ever hear like any of Ace Frehley from Kiss, like his interviews, they sound a lot like that. Where he's like, he thinks he is like very, very philosophical and everything. You're like, okay.
Have you got a favorite then, or is that too many?
Oh, God, I mean those are all so good. The stuff for that, Fred, what's the line in that when he's talking about? He goes, it's 0400 hours right now, so maybe if you'll go up at 0430, and then you go, what was that, like 500 hours? You're like, no, it's like a half an hour,
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Oh, so we got like 500 hours.
Oh god. So screenplay score for me, I think it's really clever that there's this undertone of sadness as well, and you don't see many films like this. Yes, it's very improvised, and technically that is, writing, I guess. But I think just the story is fairly simple, I would say. Very basic. But, and you've got a lot of scenes just jotted in there, which is great. But you wouldn't say maybe adds too much to the overall story, you could argue. But it's still hilarious. I just think the gag rate is just extraordinary in this film.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to have a high score just for that, so I'll probably go like a 9.3 just purely because of how hilarious this film is.
Yeah. I mean, God, it's so solid all the way through. You might deduct points because it's not really written, but like the fact that it's not written makes it even better because of so many iconic lines, like just line-o-rama of what you just like ran through, right? Of all these like fantastic lines that would be the best line in any other like thought out, like, word for word kind of scripted script. And then on top of that, they are able to create such a perfect story arc that feels natural and feels like it's all really happening and doesn't feel written, with also taking in influences from other bands and things like that. And those kind of storylines, taking stories from people who were on the road that had these like horror stories of things happen and implementing them into these characters, the characters being so tight. Everything in this film feels 100% real. The characters all feel developed. I feel like if I were watching anything, if the camera followed any one of these people out of any room at any moment, they have an entire life.
Oh yeah.
The Fran Drescher character, everybody in it, like that is in it, pops up for like one scene. You're like, this person is a real person. This is not just like somebody in some little movie. There's also there's so much, again, restraint on the screenplay because of, if you look at deleted scenes, there's so much stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor that is arguably funnier, but like you were saying, it doesn't add anything to it. So you don't want to have that in there. It just becomes fat.
Yeah. Yeah. Great balance to it. Yeah.
And I mean, they cut out an entire scene with, Billy Crystal and Dana Carvey that was filmed of them as mime waiters that is really, really funny.
Mime is money.
And these guys, become stars later, and they left it on the cutting room floor because it doesn't fit the narrative that they needed to tell. So I think it's pitch perfect, and I got to give it, a 9.8.
Wow. Cool. Yeah, because I mean, this is a pretty short film. This is like an hour and 20 minutes. So I feel like you could have easily put an extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes on here, and it probably would have been fine. But Rob Reiner, I guess, is very focused on this balance of okay, we have to keep the core story here. We can't have too many randomly placed scenes in here. And I think it's pitched perfectly in terms of that balance. And, and those individual scenes add a lot of character as well, of course. So it's beautifully balanced, I would say.
The airport scene when the bassist is going through the security and they find out that he's got a cucumber wrapped in tinfoil in his pants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That adds a lot to that guy's character, for sure. So acting then, I loved the third song, Hellhole, and when Christopher Guest is doing this rock and roll move, where he's just riffing on his guitar and falls on his back, but he can't get up, and someone from backstage comes on to help him up, and it's hilarious, the way he spins around for some reason. Then when he stands up, it's nothing happens. It's hilarious. Yeah, you mentioned that before, but I think it's just the way Nigel, Christopher Guest, comes up and he's doing all these weird rock expressions.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
I mean, 100% committal from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
I mean, I love the amp chat where Christopher Guest talks to Rob Reiner about why the amps go up to 11, and Guest is if we need that little bit extra, we can turn it up to 11. Then Rob Reiner's so why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that louder? And when Rob Reiner is asking the question, Guest is just looking at the amp and just slows down his chewing of his gum for a moment, he's really thinking about it, and just says, "These go up to 11." It's just the brilliant timing from Christopher Guest that makes the response so funny, because I think this line would just not be iconic if the timing wasn't there.
Oh yeah.
If you get that wrong, it's not funny at all.
I mean, even in that same scene when he's this one is, still got the tag on it. I don't even play that one. So don't touch it. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just pointing. Don't point at it. Don't even point at it.
Don't look at it.
Don't look at it. We spend enough time on that when we're moving to the next, whatever that little throwaway line of, we've talked about this one enough. Let's keep going.
Yeah. I think with that one, you can tell there's definitely improv there.
Oh, yeah.
They're escalating how precious this guitar is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm finding the game in that scene. Yeah.
I actually really liked Tony Hendra as Ian Faith, the band manager. I think he has the straightest performance of the group. I think, he just brings a slight different flavor of comedy here. His comedy comes as more of a surprise sometimes because you don't expect it. You don't expect him to be as funny as the others. The cricket bat stuff is weird and funny.
Yeah.
At the same time, he has his own montage about trashing stuff with his cricket bat, which is great.
So what else has he been in? Because I can't think of anything else that I've seen him in.
No.
But God, he's so good. Again, like just like you're saying, he's not the funny guy, but his character is so real, and it doesn't feel like the guy that you have to have in there to move the plot along. You know, he's not just a plot guy.
Yeah, I mean that conversation he's having with, like, I think it's the producer of the album, that girl at the party, and she's describing how sexist this album cover is, and he's like, "How's that sexist?" You know?
Yeah,
it's so brilliant, the timing there as well. It's just like, yeah, I don't understand like what you're saying. Because you don't expect it from that guy. You think he's the sensible one, but yeah, there's definitely some weirdness to that character as well.
Bruno Kirby and the limo driver, like that's another one of those characters that's like, what a character that feels like a 3-dimensional person in this thing that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. You know, he's just like, and he's only there to like show that they're kind of rude, like as he's talking to them about the book, and then they just slowly break the thing. And then again, like the camera hangs on him a little bit more. He was like, these people, they don't know anything. And he's not even offended at himself. He's offended for Frank Sinatra. They don't know Frank. They don't know Frank. Like, you don't know Frank. You don't know Frank. He's lived and loved and lost.
Oh God. Any of the other actors that you like in this movie?
Yeah, Harry Shearer he's the bass player. And like his deadpan, you know, he is kind of comes off like he definitely thinks he's the stupidest one, and I don't think that he is. He's just like the Ringo, right? He says, I'm the lukewarm water that, you know, like, but he really is probably the one who has to like calm everybody down when they get into their little diva fights. But he's so funny, getting caught in the physical stuff that he could do of staying focused on the thing, but also panicking that he's stuck in the pod as he can't get out of. And then his like getting out at the wrong time when everybody else is back in and like rocking. And then he turns around to get back in the pod and it's already closed. And he's just, like genius. So genius.
Yeah, we finished. And even just the quiet nature he has, like in the end credit scene with the interviews, like when he's going talking about all this physiological stuff, and it's just really funny like how calm he is during that, even though what's coming out of his mouth is utterly absurd.
It's he's so good. I mean, they're all, you know, everybody's great in it. Rob Reiner has that fun energy of this like not duplicitous director, but like he knows what he's capturing, right? And so like even when he's asking these questions and leading him on these things to get the next shot, it's sort of like they don't realize that he's capturing them at their worst, and he's still willing to do it, but also kind of is their friend, you know? So like he's very good in this film, all while directing it as well, you know? So yeah, I mean, everybody's good. The girlfriend feels so real as well. Like the way that she like is like leading David on the whole time, like just to get him away from the band, right, and do what she wants him to do, kind of. And God, yeah, they're all so good. They're all so good.
I feel like all the characters in this movie have a great comedy moment. No one's left out here in this movie.
Yeah.
Favorite performance, Chase? Who you going for?
Oh, I gotta say Guest, Christopher Guest. Yeah, I mean him and because Shearer is on point too, and Michael McKean, but I think it's just Christopher Guest really stands out as the one. Although I don't know, he also is the one who does break the most. If you watch it more and more, you can see when he's like he covers his mouth a lot more and he like hides behind people a lot more. Because he's just like he's not quite there with he's also genuinely enjoying what he's doing. So maybe Michael McKean.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Michael McKean really does take it. But God, I mean, all three of them. And then, you know, Harry Shearer almost being the unsung hero of the whole thing because of being the fly on the wall. And like, if you watch him in any one scene where he's not the focus, like, David and Nigel are like the focus of things. They're the ones who are talking. And you watch the things that Harry Shearer does in the background, and he is so in that moment and playing in that character that he's not acting, you know, it's a toss up with those three, but I think you gotta go with the Michael McKean. I think he's arguably the lead, and I think, you know, deservedly so, from such an ensemble performance cast.
I think I probably will go with Christopher Guest because I didn't notice him like cracking. I only saw this film the once for this podcast. I didn't notice those things, but like I mean, that line is iconic for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
But it goes up to 11, you know, because of that great comic timing from Guest, and just when he's on stage as well, just the stupid facial expressions he's giving, and he's the one that has probably the strongest arc here as well. He has a lot of stuff to do here, and just kind of like the jealousy stuff he gets to play with in terms of him noticing that Chadwick, David's girlfriend, is like interfering. You really get a sense of his jealousy there, which is kind of great and childlike. Yeah, so I'll go with Guest, I think.
All right, yeah.
So acting score for me, I think it is really great. Like comedy wise, it's right up there, and certainly with their improvisation, it's quite extraordinary. So yeah, I'll go like an 8.7 for me. How about you, sir?
I got to do 9.8
again. Oh wow,
like all the way up there. I'm throwing the scales off on this one. I just feel like there is such, you know, it is all over the top, but they're grounded so well that, you know, a lesser performer who is just as funny as these guys might blow it out too far. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not knowing where to draw that line between this is funnier if I do it this way to this serves the story if I maintain it a little bit closer. You know, you look at a movie like Walk Hard, which is not the same thing at all because they're not playing real characters. It is a huge farce, you know, kind of spoof movie. But like the way that, you know, you go over the top in something like that, you could see a lot of comedy performers, especially ones who are doing live stage comedy kind of things, might go too big. And the fact that they can keep it so funny, but not too like over the top energy in your face kind of thing. I think it's a great balance, and it shows a lot of craft and what they're doing. So yeah, 9.8.
Cool. All right, let's add up the scores then for This Is Spinal Tap. This Is Spinal Tap gets a very impressive 54.7.
There you go. But you can just write it down as a full 11.
Yeah.
One more. Would these go to 11?
It gets an added bonus point automatically for being This Is Spinal Tap. So 55.7 then.
Yeah, one level more to go.
That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.